Recording in progress.
There we go. That's the magic words we were waiting for. Okay. Delvo.
Yes.
Schuler.
Yes.
Scannell.
Present.
Dean.
Here.
Hinkvis.
Present.
Parma is excused, and Ganther. I think Jessica is here, but we do have quorum.
Excellent. The agenda, Neil has asked us to move 6, 7, and 8 up to 1, 2, and 3. Anybody have any problems with that? If not, we'll do that.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried, thank you. Okay, minutes of December 13th.
I approve it, those minutes.
Second.
Scandal and Kathy. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. So the first order of business would be number 6. And that would be consideration of possible action on a no-bill easement on RDA old property, parcel 12-112, related to potential reuse of the building at 301 North Adams, multiple condominium parcels. Okay, that is Neil?
Yep, and I think we would just ask if we could go directly into closed session for an update on that,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
So moved.
Alderman Scannell. Who's the second? I'm sorry. Kathy? Roll call. Okay, the motion to go in closed session, roll call, please.
You have to read the wording.
Yep, we'll actually read the official
Oh, yes,
wording on there, yep.
Kathy?
Okay.
Kathy, read it, sorry.
The authority may convene in closed session pursuant to sections 19.85, i.e. Wisconsin stats, for purpose of deliberating or negotiating the sale of public properties, investing in public funds, or conducting other specified public business as necessary for competitive or bargaining reasons. The authority will thereafter reconvene in open session pursuant to section 19.852 Wisconsin stats to take action on items discussed in closed session, if appropriate, and to consider the remainder of the agenda.
Now roll call.
Delvo.
Yes.
Schuler.
Yes.
Scannell.
Aye.
Dean.
Here.
Hinkvis.
Yes?
Ganther.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. We got you, thank you.
A voice
Thank
from
you.
heaven, Jessica.
It's great. Okay, we'd like to, this will be a closed session item, so we're going to ask folks who are not part of this, if we could please step out of the
Should
room.
we have rolled all into one? Are we going to go close session on all of them?
Yeah.
Well, I guess
Oh.
we could have, I suppose, should we do that still? Can we do that? How do we do that when we have multiple items?
Motion to reconsider?
If you could do a motion to reconsider and do both, but let me pull up the agenda. As long as the language is the same.
It is,
But you
for
would just-
both.
you would read both items and then read
Okay.
the closed language.
Okay, so should we just need to reconsider that one then?
Yeah, go ahead and reconsider and redo it.
Motion to reconsider?
Okay.
Motion, we can take
Second.
second by Kathy. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Now,
A motion to take 6 and 7 up together
There we go.
in closed session.
is there a second to that?
Oh, second.
Second?
Read the language already.
The wording
Can we
is
do it
ready,
again,
but
or
it
we-
says, so the wording is covered. So
Yep.
I did the roll call.
Yep.
Answers to change by anyone. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you.
All
6
right.
and 7 are together, they will be in closed session, thank you.
Yeah, we have no
Okay.
need for closed session.
I don't know. Thank you. Sorry.
So you need to let someone should designate who should be in closed session, right?
Yeah, at this point, we just need staff and members at this point.
Okay.
So we'll bring in.
Do you want to keep Brooke?
Brooke
military
can stay
ad?
military, but I think we've, like the last time, I think we're supposed to be
Otherwise,
there, yeah.
it's
so we're
just
good there.
Lisa and Pat, okay?
Yep, so I think we're good.
Wait, I'm not sure, I read this down.
And then go back into open session.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to go back to open session. Roll call, please.
Delvo.
Yes.
Schuler.
Yes.
Scannell.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Hinkvis.
Yes.
Ganther.
Yes.
Okay. And this is in regard to items 6 and 7 on the agenda. So we're back in open session, I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, and I would make the motion that staff proceed as directed in closed session.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second by Alderman Scannell. Any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And thanks to Paul and Joanne. Wonderful. Good upgrade. By the way,
right,
thank
where-
thank you, Thomas. Number 8. That's it. No, we want to do 6, 7, and 8 in front of number 1.
You did move all three.
Yep, we can go three.
Number 8, consideration of possible action on a recommendation to vacate the tax excess right-of-way to 301 North Adams Street, multiple condominium parcels. Okay, number 8 is that Neil again?
Yes, sir. This is essentially the right-of-way. There's an existing, essentially about, I think it's approximately 900 square feet, 1,900 square feet of right-of-way that is in front of the kind of loading bays, essentially for the Bay Lake City Center building. That really doesn't have any business being in public right-of-way. Essentially, it is serving the private property. Conversations with DPW, the city really has no interest in maintaining ownership of that property or being required to maintain it over time, and so is requesting for direction to have that, essentially we consulted with DPW. Apparently it's an administrative process for vacation of excess right-of-way, according to Director Grenier. So we're just asking for direction if we could proceed with getting that and getting that attached to the Bay Lake parcel.
Questions, comments? I'd like to entertain a motion.
Motion to proceed, for staff to proceed.
I'll second that.
Motion by Alderman Scannell, the second by Matt. Questions or comments to the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Back to number 1.
All this time, we're at number 1.
Yeah, we're only one more yell that time. Back to number 1. All right, number 1. Consideration of possible action to approve the First Amendment to River's Edge Development Agreement. Interesting, to say the least. Who's got that one?
That's me.
Yes.
And actually, it's the addendum, okay, so River's Edge, we own the land underneath it, the developer's making payments, they just transferred it last year into a new ownership. Well, the new owner's like, hey, I think I might want to buy this land, how do we do that? Well, according to the lease agreement that was set up originally, it only can happen on anniversary dates, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So I worked with Attorney Kochert and the developer, and this is just an addendum that allows that to happen outside of the anniversary date. So there's a whole process in the lease on how that would work with appraisals for potential purchase, but we can't even do that unless we amend that original agreement.
Right.
So that's the addendum which allows that negotiation to take place outside of the anniversary date.
Let's talk in generalities. I mean, normally we don't want to own land like that. So in general, this was a unique situation where we owned the land and let people build. And how many years ago was that?
87?
85.
85, yeah.
Don't you think this is kind
It
of
was
a
before my
rash
time.
judgment here, like kind of short-term thinking?
I've been thinking about it for a while,
Okay.
but I just had time to work on it now. But, and this isn't, of course, anything that would be negotiated would have to come back.
Right.
But this would, well, we really can't even negotiate that.
So
until this changes.
this amendment would allow us.
It seems like
It gives
a
us-
weird original.
It gives the RDA the
Contract,
window
what
to
the-
be able to
was a
negotiate.
creative
It's a little bit more broad.
Yeah.
Say
Yeah.
the least.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Scannell, second by Kathy, to approve drawing up this amendment. Question or comment? Yeah, please.
Yeah, Cheryl, do you have, like, by chance, the original minutes from when that deal was first put in place? Because everyone's saying it's a real weird deal. There's always a reason,
Yeah?
and I'd be genuinely curious what that reason is.
I could probably find those minutes on fourth floor, I'm thinking, paper form,
Mhm.
I would think.
Yeah,
So it's possible to take
I think it would be
those out.
healthy for this body. I have no problem with the motion right
Right,
now.
right.
But before we go into that next phase, right, of approving something, it'd be healthy for this body to know the why.
Yep, and I think this was like one of our first HIDs, right? It was
Mhm.
a way to build these brand-new apartments on the river back then, and it was a way to subsidize that development, would be my guess, but I'll find those minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing it was.
Is everything still in?
I thought the deal happened. John, I mean, there was, good idea, let's find out.
I just wonder if there was an
Absolutely.
intent to protect, that waterfront access or something.
Yeah, right.
Oh, right.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Questions or comments in regard to the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Logan. There were no questions, so it was approved.
Good comment, Alderman Johnson. Consideration of possible action on the non-compliance of the community development block grant agreements between RDA and UCAP Inc. for the two shelter projects located at 315 South Jefferson Street and 932 Cherry Street. Okay.
That'd be me.
Will,
Chair.
please.
Thank you. And if recall back to the July RDA meeting in 2021, we had a request come in for new cap. There was an unmet need right now, or that back then, and still currently, for shelter for beds for families. And then also a drop-in day service and also shelter for youth. So we had allocated or awarded them block grant dollars to purchase those properties in order to build the shelter for families and then also the shelter for youth. As part of the block grant agreements that were drawn up, it committed the new cap to build, have their capacity between 10 and 12, which is what they were estimating initially.
Families.
Families, thank you, 10 to 12 families. But due to some building restraints that they encountered, they are only able to house 5 families in that shelter now. And then with the Cherry Street property, the money was awarded based on the fact that they were going to be a shelter, and currently right now they are not licensed to be a shelter. So we just need to ensure that there is a clear path forward to bring both of these projects into compliance with the agreements. It's just something that we're trying to be a little bit more aware of, just with, there's been a lot of changeover at HUD, and we just got audited, which nothing has been found that we're aware of yet, but we just want to ensure that we are following through with the language that's in our contracts and agreements. So, that said, we needed to bring this forward to the RDA here to make you aware of this. We also have Representative Newcap here as well, which we have request opening the floor just to let them share a little bit about updates on the project and what's going on there.
Motion open the floor.
Kathy?
Second?
Kathy and Alderman Scannell, motion open on the floor. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion open. Newcap, right?
Yes, sure.
Come on up here. Come on up here.
Can come to the podium if you'd like.
Sure.
You come to the chair if you'd like as well. It's
Whichever
up to
you prefer.
Wherever you feel more comfortable.
I can do either one. Probably have to do the glasses on and off thing, which I find
I
to be-
totally get that.
Yeah.
Give it a little roll there.
And I find it to be really annoying because I hate looking at people through glasses. It just feels like there's this weird barrier thing there. I think I've used it with screens, so I'll probably do this. I'm still getting adjusted to wearing the dumb things in my face all the time. Thank you all. I'm Cheryl Dietrich. I'm the CEO of NewCap, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. And so the both of these projects have been a bit of a journey. Start with Cherry Street because it is much further along. So Cherry Street, we got through the construction process, ran into some interesting construction delays. Once we got into the planning process and submitting and going through all of it, found out we were going to have to fully fire sprinkler that building, which, and that's, so Cherry Street is at Cherry and Webster, so it is across Cherry Street from the Old Whitney School. So it's about a 100-year-old building. And we didn't think we were having enough people in there that we were going to be required, but about a year, maybe it's been a year and a half ago now, I've lost track of my years, the state building department changed the codes for fire. What didn't use, when we first went into this process, the fire codes were different for these types of buildings, so they've now changed them after we are acquired and got into state permitting. And they said, oh, you're going to have to fire sprinkler this whole building. And I went, it's a 100-year-old building, I'm not even sure what so we started that process. We had to bring in a 3-inch water main. You've probably been aware of the construction delays around the country, concrete delays, just getting the parts for it were months of delays. We got through that process. We opened the drop-in center, so operating on the first floor, but no one could sleep there until the beginning of April. Then we went through the process. We got our certificate of occupancy on July 26th, so we could actually, after we got through the entire process, one of the things we discovered is that for the youth license, because this is a shelter care license. So shelter care license is required for housing youth under 18 because they are minors. And since they would be under our care, we have to have a shelter care license. Which makes sense. We want to make sure that youth under 18 all of the rules are followed. As we were going through that, we found out that there were some windows that didn't meet the shelter care license code, so we had to change out windows. When we changed out the windows, it affected the asbestos siding. So we ended up not only changing windows, we had to change the siding. So it's just, things snowballed as it went along. But we have our certificate of occupancy, and then we started the licensure process. They being the Division of Children and Families, will not start anything to do with that process until you are ready for occupancy. So it's not like we could have the two processes going on in tandem. They wouldn't even talk to us other than we had a question about a window, and that fortunately we found it out when we were in construction with other things, so we could get through that process at the same time. So we started August 22nd. We sent back the forms and agreements, started meeting with the judge and the county to get all of these things signed off. There were many conversations between us and Brown County because Brown County doesn't have any additional funding to pay for beds in shelter care. We weren't asking for money, we just needed them to sign off on the license because that's part of the process. We submitted the agreement to the county with the judges, various judges' signatures on it, on September 14th. I got the signed application back with the final signature from the county board chair on December 21st. After many times of back and forth and back and forth, there was a period of time where the county corporate counsel didn't believe that the county needed to sign off. We had to go back and forth to provide him with information that, yes, we do need you to sign, so that took us a while. So September 21st, they signed it at that county board meeting. We got everything in. We have it now submitted to the PIE system, which is not Partners in Education, which was the first thing my brain's on if you're in this community. I'm going, why does PIE care? But okay, I guess it's kids. And then I realized it's not. It's the state system. So we've uploaded everything to their system. They are now reviewing and will start their inspection process. So as soon as we get through their process, we will be housing youth there, but we are currently operating as a drop-in center already on the first floor and have been. So that one is in process. That one's further along. Jefferson Street.
Did any indication from the state on when they approve those things, or
No,
you're kind of stuck?
Our background we have on this from House of Hope. Now, they did theirs completely remotely during pandemic.
Yep.
They only had 2 on-site inspections. One of them, they had to do some redesign work because that was an addition. Theirs took almost 6 months.
Oh, okay.
But everybody was remote. We don't anticipate it taking that long.
Okay.
Especially as House of Hope gave us their application, all of their information. So we basically took all of their policies and procedures. We took everything, duplicated them, changed numbers, changed the address. That's already approved. For House of Hope, I know that was a delay, Cheryl, with them they went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on that because they were kind of plowing new ground for this entire process. We anticipate a month or so.
Okay.
We are pushing as much as we can, but.
So hopefully by spring.
Yes.
Be up and running.
Yes, have them fully running. Right now, we are using the Jefferson Street site to house the families, the Cherry Street site, to house the families that are going to would have then been at Jefferson Street had Jefferson been further along. So the site's being used.
So just quick question on Cherry Street, because I'm just clueless on it. When it's operating as a shelter, can you give me some of the examples of circumstances that create needs for a minor to need a shelter?
For most of us, I think virtually all of us in this room and probably online who are parents or grandparents or even aunts or uncles, it is a little inconceivable what we're seeing. So, and I have some data for you. So this is from the school district.
And I know this is not going to be uplifting.
No,
but
it's
I
not.
want to know.
No, it's not. I know we don't drink alcohol at these meetings, but I'll tell you, after some of this information we've gotten and some of the stories, they're tough stories. So during the academic 21-22 school year, Brown County had 123 unaccompanied homeless youth.
Wow.
Children,
Wow.
as young as 6. House of Hope has had children appear as young as 5 unaccompanied to their youth shelter.
What does that mean, like a 5-year-old? Like, how does that work?
Somebody finds them on the street.
They just find them on the street? They don't know?
Well, they find them on the street, the families are disintegrating around these, especially young children.
Right.
Drugs, alcohol, crime, some cases domestic violence, but often statutorily, if there's domestic violence, two partners who are, even if they're it's a co-violent relationship, it's technically domestic violence.
Okay.
But if there's just violence in the household, or if there's a parade of other adults
Right,
in the
right.
house.
Okay.
And then they all just move away and leave the kids.
So then wouldn't the county get involved in that?
They do, but in the
child?
meantime, they
Where
need
do they
someplace to
go?
put them.
Okay.
And there aren't enough foster parents.
Gotcha. So
So they end
that's
up
where
in
it goes
shelter,
to.
right? And that's where the county is involved, and they use these shelter sites, and they have
Yep.
shelter care funds they
Okay.
have beds assigned to.
That helps explain that.
The young ones, yes. It is pretty mind-boggling. So the unaccompanied youth data, 91 out of 123 of these children are in the Green Bay Area Public School System. There are 1,283, so there's a federal statute called McKinney-Vento. McKinney-Vento is the education department's view of what makes a family homeless. A family is homeless under McKinney-Vento if they don't have an ongoing, stable place where they live that can't be yanked out from under them any moment, and not just because they don't pay their rent. If they're doubled up, and they're or doubled or tripled up, and the landlord could come in at any minute and say, you're over occupancy, all these people have to leave. Or you have a family couch surfing, what we see a lot in our communities, and we can have children in the house on the couches, and the parents are in the car in the garage. And it's a situation where they're with a friend, or a friend of a friend, or with a family or an extended family, and at some point, somebody may get frustrated or angry and just say, you have to go. Or there's this violent relationships going on, or drugs or alcohol, and they say, I'm sorry, but you're damaging my family, you have to go. What we saw a lot of during pandemic was families who were co-living. The family who had the lease said, I'm sorry, I can't risk my family, you have to go. So we saw a huge jump in this during 2021. It is back down to normal with those 1,200 families. So we have 1,283 youth who are doubled up. They're unstable, they may be living in motels, where at $100 a night, how long can a parent afford that? I mean, that's $3,000 a month. So they may afford it for a week, and then they're back in their car, or back doubled up. So we're seeing a lot of that type of thing going on. But of what we're talking about, these youth, there's 123 who are just unaccompanied. There's no adult. There's no guardian. There may be violence. The child may not feel safe in the home environment. There may be a step-parent or a friend of mom or dad that's in the environment. There may be drugs or alcohol. The child doesn't feel safe. We're seeing a lot of incredibly high numbers of children who are being sexually assaulted in their own home. And so the kids leave. They just don't feel safe. They feel safer on the street than they do at home, which is a terrifying statistic, that we have children who feel safer living on the street than they do in their home environment. So we're seeing that. So I know it doesn't help, but does that answer the question?
It certainly paints the picture.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, when we first got into this, I thought it was one here and one, and we started looking at the numbers, it's horrifying. So that's where we are on all of those, so that's the youth piece. Any questions before?
And so with Brown County,
Yes.
they probably just assumed that you were going to be looking for funding through their program.
Yes, for the
Which is why
shelter,
they
right.
were kind of delaying things or not super
Yes.
quick on responding.
Yes. And then, since they weren't giving us funding, there was this ongoing conversation with the county, well, if we're not giving the money, why do we have to sign? Why are we even involved in this process? And then it was back to the state, so they'd contact us, and then we'd contact the state. And, okay, so why are they in this process? And then it was a lot of that back and forth. But that piece is now, or at least
Okay.
finally done there.
Cool.
So Jefferson Street, also a very old building. After we acquired, and of course, then we got into building plans, and so it's 315 South Jefferson. So it's at Jefferson and Doty, pretty much. It's one house off. Right behind our building is Casa Alba. So YW parking lot, we're catty corner from the parking lot. We should kind of share that corner parking lot there. So that give you, so it has big porch. Yeah, I know. If I got to YW, I need to get there. So we got into plan review and started figuring out what we needed to do there. Again, the new fire codes came in. We had to sprinkler all 4 floors. It includes the basement. Later, at a later point in the process, a walkthrough with fire chief, he indicated the fire system was not acceptable the way it was. With that big covered porch, had to have sprinkler heads in it. For reasons that was my face as well, Kathy. Why are we but we had to do that. So we had to come back in and add additional fire sprinkler heads to that. When we were going through design and going back and forth between our architect and the city building department and the state building department, because it was a dormitory, they said we had to have a kitchen per floor. And it had to be a permanent kitchen, so we were doing design, trying to figure all of that piece out. We originally started out with plans for this to be all 3 floors occupied. So the way this building is structured, you walk in the front door and there's a room. There's a big living room, a big dining room, kitchen in the back, and then there was a old pantry kind of thing that we've now turned into offices because we had to have some space for staff to be there. On this, you go up there's a back staircase, old house, right? So there's a back staircase. It was at some point the servants' staircase, and then there was a front staircase. There's a doorway that separates them. Originally, Christopher Nauman, who was our architect, said that according to code, that was 2 separate staircases, so we had 2 separate exits. Once we got back and forth, both the city building department and our second time that we had a work stoppage at the project said that they weren't counting that, they wouldn't count that as second staircase, and they were not allowing us to occupy the 3rd floor at all. Not for offices, not for storage, not for anything. That was once we had $300,000 into the building. It was late August of last year, at which time I reached out to the city and said, I've got 2 sets of stamped approved building permits, what do you mean? So we had a meeting and we came to have the architect in and came to high agreement and agreed that, okay, how can we make this work? At the end of the day, it ends up we got a drawing for you, Will, and we're trying to explain to you and Cheryl. What ended up being the biggest problem why we can't occupy the 3rd floor, which is one of the huge reasons why the numbers came down. We can put 1 room up there. So this is the back of the building.
Wow, that's amazing.
So we put a new set of staircase, and you can see this staircase, how far out it goes and all this zigzaggy thing going on. So this 3rd story up here where this balcony is, okay, that was supposed to be this staircase was supposed to come up here to be a 3rd floor staircase. So we have a secondary external exit. This doesn't meet code because of the rise and run of the stairs. It has to be a 7-11. The rise is 7 inches and the run is 11 inches. The math doesn't work. For this to get a staircase to come up here, this right here, this little box, is where the door has to be. So I kept hearing them say, well, just cut into the roof line. And they finally took me out there and they had a drawing, and they said, they had one of the guys stand up on the ladder and they said they were doing this. They said, see me right here? And I said, yes. They said, this is the door. And I went, oh. So it would literally in the middle of space for us to do it. So after we went back and forth we just finally came to the conclusion that there's no way that this building, with the way it is built, will support full occupancy on the 3rd floor. So we lost 3 bedrooms.
You can't do a fire pole?
Can we do something?
I was just going to suggest.
Yep. Well, there's that, I don't have a picture with me, but on the front of it, there's that big covered porch. Back at some point in the day, on that big covered porch, there used to be a railing around it because there's 2 doors. The front 2 bedrooms, in the closets, there's doors. And I'm thinking later on from maybe a facade perspective to bring this back to what it looked like. Can we do a railing out there and have that be, usable space? It would just be cool to have it. I think it'd be a great place to watch fireworks cross over the Fox River from. I stood and sighted. I'm going to say, if you sat right here, there's a great view of the fireworks. But when we did that, they said, well, yes, we have to rebuild the porch, the roof. It would be expensive. We could do it. It would be very cool. But the fire chief looked at me and said, but no, you can't use that as egress. I said, why? Why can't I put, like fire ladders down like I have with my grandkids at their house that's got a 3rd story and no exits out of it? And he said, for this use, it's a dormitory use. It's against the code. They won't allow it. So we just in the end of the day, other than this back room, which is a small room, and we can put a small family, like a parent and a child, we lost the third floor, so we lost 3 rooms there. On the second floor, there's a center room, and then there's the front room that's essentially the big rounded windows off the porch. What they recommended we do, we can put 2 families there, so we can get up to 6 families and 21 humans, however we parcel them out. But what they recommend is, one of the things we know we're seeing in our homeless family numbers is large families, families of 4 and 5 kids and larger. They recommended we be able to use that as a large family suite to accommodate some of these large families, because right now, most of our shelters can't accommodate them unless they break them up into 2 groups to have enough space for the families. So we can get 22 people, we can get, for normal, my size family, so I have 2 children, so 4 people, we could get 1 room, but if we have a larger family, 4 or 5 children, we'd break that 1 bedroom up into 2. So we're looking at 22 people. We'd originally original plan was going to have 31, I think, was the original numbers. So that's where we are. We are, our certificate of occupancy, we will have it if the building permit people do their inspections, January 31st, so we can get everybody in. So that's kind of the big picture. What we've run into there, also, we've had to do redesign twice. The fire system, we had to bring in a 4-inch water main, because we have to get water from the street to the 3rd floor and back down again. We found a cistern, an old cistern in the basement that nobody knew was there, and it was flooding and leaking, so we had to go in and fix that. When we were demolishing the kitchen area, there was a center load-bearing wall on the 1st floor that had structurally failed. There was severe settling in the portion of the floor, and it was due to the fact that the bearing load from the 2nd floor was never built correctly. It was a house 100 years ago. We throw stuff in, we're good. So we discovered that when we were in old houses. Gotta love old houses.
So there was a lot of cost overruns.
Yes. Oh, we
And so-
had originally budgeted 150,000, and we're almost 450.
So a lot of overruns. And the bottom line then is the original 10 to 12 families is more like 6.
It's 5 to 6.
5 to 6.
6 standard size families, and 5 if we were housing a large family.
Okay.
So unfortunately, we're only half occupancy, which is, our homeless numbers this winter they're bad.
Right.
And they're getting worse. Yep.
All right, so, and I think our concern as staff, just because
Right.
we're getting,
Right.
we're accountable to HUD, was that.
Which is no
We
fun.
funded a project that had 10 to 12 families originally, and now due to construction overruns and whatnot, that really has been gone down to 5 or 6. Hindsight's 20/20, I guess, if we were to come to the RDA back then and ask, if this ask came in at that, for half that amount, would we have funded all of it? Probably we would have been close, I would think, but we just wanted to bring that for comfort level for the RDA.
Are we
Looking
in
at that.
compliance with contract though,
No.
with HUD?
Not right now, and I guess I would like to defer to Krista. This is my first experience coming into, an experience such as this, where a project, it doesn't necessarily come into fruition as is written in the agreement. So is that simply like an amendment that we?
Yeah, we would just do an amendment to the agreement and knock the 10 to 12 families down to what?
5 or
Say
6, 5 to
5 or
6.
6, and then have each party sign it.
And that would
we'd be
put
in
us into
compliance with
compliance?
it, yeah.
So if the RDA was comfortable with that.
If you're
we
comfortable
could-
with that,
We would
yeah.
draft that amendment to the contract and adjust those numbers on that to a lesser number of families.
And then what about Cherry Street? Do we need to do?
It sounds like that it's, I don't want to say bureaucracy, but it sounds like it's bureaucracy. So it's in
Says the guy who
process.
works for the local government.
I'm going to consider because it's not the city, right? It's not not our bureaucracy.
Higher bureaucracy.
Higher bureaucracy. So I think this is just a matter of keeping open lines of communication and letting us know when you receive those licenses to have an open house. And I will say, Krista and I did attend the open house they had at Cherry Street, and it's like night and day.
It's beautiful.
They did a beautiful job with the inside and then the exterior as well.
Oh, we had to rebuild the porch, that was the other thing. The porch wouldn't have passed their codes either. We were going to eventually rebuild the front porch, but they're going to make us do it during the licensing process. I've got contractors here, just get the porch done.
Any questions? Otherwise, we'll go back to open session.
Motion to close the floor.
Second.
Thank you.
Motion and second to close the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So we are back to regular order of business.
So it sounds like from what you've raised here from a contractual perspective, we can change the contract to say it was 13, we can move it to 5 to 6. And from the adolescent building, they're going to look at getting their license within 6 months, which, you know what Cheryl is saying, when I did the accreditation at the YW, I know, it took us 2 years. We were ready.
Oh, don't, that's, wow.
Bureaucracy.
Oh, it doesn't take
Just
that
a
long.
long, I mean, I think Cheryl's all over it,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
I would second that motion.
There you go.
There's a motion and a second. Questions or comments in regard to the motion? If not, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you.
Excellent job.
Thank you, nice job.
Yeah. Item number 3. Consideration of possible action to grant a 5-month extension to planning option with MF Housing Partners LLC for 1,100 block of East Walnut and award a loan $300,000 of ARPA funds to fill a gap in the project's financing. That's Will again, right?
That's me again. Yep, thank you very much, Chair.
Yep.
Right, so there's progress to be reported. This is a very exciting project. As it stands right now, MF Housing Partners is working with city staff. We're going to have a tech review meeting tomorrow with fire, engineering, and planning to go over their plans. So things are moving forward. However, just with the delays that we've been experiencing, there's been changes in interest rates, also increases in materials as well. So that's the primary reason for the gap in funding. I do like just make the Redevelopment Authority aware that the developer is in the room with us. Mr. Downs here from Housing Partners, and is more than able to answer any questions you may have regarding the project. There's the partner involved with this is not quite ready to go public yet, so there's some of the financing we may not be able to go talk about in open session, which is why there's closed session language.
Krista or Cheryl, so the $300,000, what is our balance of the ARPA funds?
We were allocated 1.5 million,
Okay.
and we've not drawn on that account yet.
We haven't drawn anything yet. Okay.
Is there a timeline? It has to be expended.
Yes, we need to spend ARPA dollars by 2020.
However,
2026, but-
however, there is a provision through the federal government that we can use set up a revolving loan
Okay.
with these funds, and then those funds don't have to be paid back by that deadline.
Yeah, and this is new information, so the Department of the Treasury changed
Okay.
the rules, which in a positive direction, to allow for lending like this to occur.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
surprising, but, so when the 1.5 million was authorized by council, originally it was thought that it would have to be granted out. So this money's gonna go a lot further than we originally anticipated, and, you know, like Will said, it'll operate like a revolving loan fund,
Oh,
which is
great,
very beneficial.
great.
And what's ARPA?
American Rescue Plan Act.
Gold. It's gold.
Gold.
So what would be the conditions of the loan? I mean, your interest rate?
So and I have in the recommendation here is that terms of the loan would be determined by staff and the developer. So it would be obviously a lower interest rate than what's out there right now. But then we also, and I'm not a finance expert, or a developer for that matter, but it's my understanding that sometimes, depending on the terms of your funding sources, they could be in conflict with one another, and as far as trying to get the project to close, which they do expect or are planning to close in June, end of June. But we would just want to work on those terms alongside the developers to find something that's mutually beneficial.
Okay. Questions, comments, please?
It certainly sounds like this use of ARPA funds is completely in line with the objective and intent of how we want to do it.
And we, you know, we have other funding into this as well. you know,
Right.
we've got the land donation as well, and I think is there some home? And-
So we have home funds, 400 of home, 400 of TDA, and a low interest loan as well.
Wow.
And then a request, so really, and plus the donation of land. But to be quite transparent with you all, this gap that this developer is experiencing is not out of the ordinary with what other developers are coming in at.
You're going to see future requests.
You're going to see future requests, and, you know, we started out the year with all of these funds available for affordable housing, and those funds are going to be allocated pretty quickly. I'm kind of projecting by spring, summer, like, we're going to have a lot of these funds allocated into projects, potentially.
Because 1.5, yeah, I mean, that's a chunk of it.
And we're trying to diversify this as much as possible with what resources we have available, especially going if we have an opportunity to go the route of a loan as opposed to straight up grants. Just to try to make these dollars go further in the future.
Well, especially with the other funds you have stacked into it,
Right.
right?
And there's a lot of great projects out there right now. We have this need for housing.
Yep.
And I haven't seen one affordable housing project come forward that doesn't have a gap. So it's
This is
challenging.
this is creating new units, it's not existing, right? It's creation of new units, it's on RDA owned land. The number of parcels that we can dispose of, so it's a really good
For
thing.
at-risk youth.
No.
This is straight affordable housing. There's going to be a mix. This was one that
Might
was.
be thinking of Jazz House.
Might be thinking of
Yeah,
Jazz
you
House.
think-
This is straight affordable. There's a mix of 30, 60, and 80.
I am, yeah, that one.
Yeah, and they've done a nice job getting more than the guys want. 4 3-bedroom units, which,
Oh, that's it. Please, we should open the floor.
You don't
I
get many
agree.
of those.
A motion to open the floor, please?
Motion open the floor.
Second.
Okay, motion, Alderman Scannell and Dan, all those in favor of opening the floor, signify by saying aye.
aye.
Opposed, please.
Great, thanks, guys. Thanks for considering this request as well. We have made a lot of progress, which Will alluded to. And I just kind of wanted to touch on the gap. I think, you know, everybody is going to come forward with this if they want to build affordable housing, because we're in this place, right, where if I'm a market rate developer and my interest rates go up, which they have, we all know that, and costs haven't gone down, we're in an inflationary time, I could raise my rents. But I can't do that because this is affordable housing. So everything's going up, and it makes the projects not feasible. So we came back and talked to the city staff just about, you know, how do we make this happen? Because it was at a point where, and even the 300,000, we asked for more. They're just, you know, being good stewards. We're being good stewards. So, you know, we I think are very close. We're hoping that rates are going to start to stabilize. We'll start to maybe see some costs go down by the time we bid it out and close. But like Will said, we are moving forward. And I think once we can announce our partner that's going to occupy some space, I think it'll be a really cool collaboration that everyone will be excited about. So hopefully we can do that soon. And we'll have a neighborhood meeting next week.
Yep.
So get some more feedback from the neighbors as well. But if there's any other questions, it is Debbie, it's a WIDA tax credit 9% project that was allocated late because they didn't allocate all their credits, and then came out and did allocate in October, this project. So we were a little, you know, trying to play catch up
You were
now.
turned down at first, right?
We were.
Yeah.
We were. Yeah. So I don't know if there are any other questions that.
Just one quick one.
Yeah.
What does the MF stand for?
Oh my gosh, so, you can use your imagination, but that's not it.
That's all I wondered. Just say it on the record.
So, my development company is named Mosaic Development, and I was partnering with another developer named For Development, so we thought it would be great, just MF, and then as we've rolled that out, more people have said, huh? And we did not think about that, so, anyway.
It's a plausible story.
Have the letters gone out yet for the?
They should. Has anybody called you?
No, not yet.
Oh, yeah, they were mailed.
Okay.
Yeah. Double
I'll
check.
keep checking my mailbox.
You didn't get one yet?
No.
Oh. All right, let me double check that.
Questions or comments?
No. Exciting, good stuff.
Motion to go back to regular order business?
Motion to go back into regular
Alderman
busyness.
Scannell.
Second.
Matt, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're back. Thank you. We are back to regular order business.
Yeah, and I'd make the motion that we grant the extension of the planning option to June 30th, 2023, and award the loan of $300,000 in ARPA funds with terms, interest rate stuff to be negotiated with the developer.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Matt and a second by Alderman Scannell. Questions or comments in regards to the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good luck. Number 4, consideration of possible action on approval of a hold harmless agreement on Broadway Inc. for the use of 164 Hubbard Street for events in 2023.
So this is mine, this is a little selfish
Okay.
request of mine, but On Broadway is really very active in their programming with things,
Yes.
right,
Yeah.
on Broadway,
Absolutely.
which is fabulous. We own the lot at 164, the Red Sculpture Park. So we keep getting these requests in to use that lot. I'm like, why don't we just do it for a year? Let's do a hold harmless for a year to cover the events you've got throughout the year. So that's my request, is let's just give them the use of that property for a year.
I like
This
it
is
to go through
individual
hoops.
events.
This was the same hunk of land that the Chris Kindle Market was on.
Yes,
Yes.
which is one of the events that needed a hold
Yep,
harmless, right?
got it.
But there's like, I don't know, at least 7 or 8, I think, listed. But
Well,
a
and we
lot.
can get more.
Okay, move to
Exactly.
approve.
Debbie
That's right.
made the motion.
Second.
Debbie made the motion, seconded by Kathy. Questions or comments on the motion? If not, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thanks. Excellent. Consideration of possible action on communication by Alderman Johnson, dated January 2nd, 2023, to direct staff to initiate negotiation and purchase agreement, including Phase 1 ESA for the acquisition of parcels 2-958, I-1404, 2-944, and 2597, commonly referred to as the Ashland Avenue Rail Yard. And that is,
Do we have a picture where that is?
It's the old rail yard. Where the ninth,
Ashland?
you know, where the,
Oh, the viaduct. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
viaduct, viaduct chicken.
I'm like, I
you got
couldn't
number 5?
figure out where this was.
It said prepared by this blank.
I think it was
It's,
just-
well, it's a communication that came
refer
through
to staff.
council that
Oh, I
we just
see.
refer to staff before we do some work on it.
Alderman Johnson, you
The
want to
alders
comment?
here that.
Sure. So, yeah, I submitted this is in my district. You guys are familiar with the viaduct, of course, and there's been some discussion on and off over the years about the future of that viaduct in particular. Obviously, the rail yard has abandoned their use, their original use of that yard, and of course, that viaduct doesn't, from a functionality perspective, doesn't need to be there unless the rail yard were to reconvene use of that site. We've had some challenges on there over the years when you think about long weed, long grass complaints. You think about trash that collects in that yard, and then, of course, even homelessness, camping that occurs in that area. And so it's just really a blighted site within our community. It's likely there's some environmental remediation that might be required there. While in the communication, I had suggested a Phase 1, I think you could probably just skip that step and go right to Phase 2. But I put in all of those parcels. If anyone's familiar with Brown Dog, I just grabbed them off of there. And it's meant to cover, when you're on Ashland Avenue, you have a small slice that is to the east of Ashland Avenue. And then, of course, you've got the wide open area that most people are familiar with on the west side. But then it also includes a little bit of parcel that starts to eke towards, if you were to follow that railroad track, and eventually it connects to where the Mountain Bay Trail is. So it includes some parcels that are still owned by the rail yard that eke out into that direction. I included all of those because when you start to think about long-term planning, visioning of what that area could be and what it ought to be, I think you could make the case for connecting the Mountain Bay Trail back to the downtown area. Bottom line is, I think that there are some uses that the city has for that site that I'd rather not talk about right now in open session. Of course, the language on there is just to refer it to staff, so there will be a future opportunity for us to have those discussions. Right now, I think we've done some preliminary outreach with them. Historically, there hasn't been, a real desire, I don't think, to sell it because the railroad has owned that property in a tax exempt status. However, recently, a couple of years ago, we were able to add it back onto the tax roll, and which I think because they intended or abandoned the original use of that site. And so not only are we collecting taxes on it, but we have a way to recover invoices when we do send people out there to clean it up. So there's some progress that's been made there, I think, for how we manage that site and make it a little bit better for that neighborhood. But I think now we need to really take it to the next step and start contemplating how that site can be reimagined for the benefit of the city and that neighborhood. We just need to initiate some conversations with the railroad company and determine if there's a willingness and a desire on their part to engage in those conversations, and that's what I'm asking for the RDA support today, is just to refer it to staff, let them do that work. The one thing that I would respectfully submit that be added onto that motion, because I know sometimes, and I don't think it's anyone's intent, but sometimes these motions can get referred back and then they never see the light of day again, so I would just respectfully request that as part of the motion. Like I said, I don't think that'll happen, but as part of the motion, I would just ask that that we actually put a date, a future date on there, that the staff come back and report back to the RDA on what the status of that inquiry and maybe even negotiation is, so.
Well, all these parcels are owned by the railroad right now?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's other parcels in there I'd love to look at, but let's start with this one.
Canadian National.
Correct, yep. And so this, I mean, how would you fund it? Well, I think there's a couple of ways that we can do that, but obviously that's undeveloped land, so we'll figure that out.
So by putting a date on it, you want to try and railroad staff?
30 days, 60, Brian, what are you guys looking for? 90?
30 days for an inquiry?
For just
30 is kind of.
60?
Well, just for an inquiry, if that's all we're looking for is kind of reach out and see if they're willing to have a conversation with us, 30 days would be fine.
Yeah.
So you're gonna like go
Next
to
RDA meeting.
Montreal and go into the CN building?
Be easy enough to get
How do
a
they present it?
communication out to them, whether or not we'll get something back within 30 days.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is true, yes.
It's an open question, but.
Yeah.
So I think if we say bring it back in 30, if we haven't heard back from them, we'll just report that, and then we'll kick it down the road again.
Will do.
Yeah.
Kick them.
Okay.
But obviously, I think this is a site that's been talked about for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, there's some things right now that I think should prompt us to kind of crank up that process to really inquire what we can do with it.
Good. Motion, move to approve with the status in 30 days.
Second.
Motion by Kathy, and a second by Debbie. Questions or comments regarding the motion? If not, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Wow. We covered a lot of ground today, guys. Information, I had no questions or comments in regard to finance report, check register. I don't know if anybody else does. Director's report, what's happening, Neil?
We have the written summaries about 90% done. We're waiting on some year-end stats to kind of wrap up from our building inspection and our zoning information. So once we've got those in, we'll be sharing that not only with RDA, but with Plan Commission and Council as well. So we'll have a full kind of year-end recap of everything.
It's on the verge.
So yes, yeah, but if anybody has any specific questions on any projects, certainly, obviously with time, here's the list of projects. We can certainly go through and, certainly we have a meeting with Merge coming up here in 2 weeks to kind of discuss, update on their project, working with 200 North Monroe on figuring out their environmental, exactly how that's getting taken care of. Staff's having conversations with Impact 7, kind of waiting for a revised, a more formal site plan submittal from them under their planning option, but we think that's going to be coming. JBS, we've executed our contract with Grafe and Muse, the consultants on that site. We've had our first preliminary internal meeting on that. We're trying to kind of accelerate their schedule back on a little bit and kind of tighten that up a little bit with them, but we'll see some activity on that here very shortly.
Good.
216 military, if everybody saw Plan Commission last night, we're working on updated plan unit developments and development agreements related to the temporary use of the Shopko buildings, maybe going more permanent, if there's if the residential use in the front can be approved and done on that. So they're not officially linked together, but they are procedurally in terms of how we're doing some things there. So we're looking at probably bringing an updated development agreement back to through this body, probably hopefully in the next 30 days.
You had the planning commission yesterday?
Yep, that was a sort of review. They had their public hearings on both those projects, yes.
Okay, I know Leo had some concerns, so I'm hoping.
Yeah, there's certainly there's some. This is a unique aspect of it. If RDA remembers, the initial deal was essentially for the exchange for allowing them to kind of do some redevelopment planning and consider some other development on the front part of that parking lot parcel that the city would consider allowing what normally wouldn't be allowed in the C3 use more permanently. So right now, that's a temporary use, but proceeding going forward, that would allow those things to be more permanent if they were able to execute both projects in terms of some design standards and some other issues we're still working through with them at this point. But right now, we're positive that it should work. It looks like it could be good. It's a good test for us. Obviously, we've got East Town Mall, which has had, all like some of the great retail development kind of happening now in the internal part of that parking lot. In the mall building itself actually has the retail in front with the industrial use in the back part of that building.
Yes.
We're taking a similar approach to this lot at 216, even though they're separate buildings. The uses are still the commercial and residential in front with the kind of restricted light industrial behind. If it's visually screened where we can't see it, and they still are meeting the buffers for the particular area, we think this has good potential, something we can maybe replicate on some of our other larger format lots with these big parking lots throughout the city, if we can actually get this to work effectively and everybody to agree how to move forward.
I think the concern was with the development of affordable housing on that site, right? And the lack of green space and the amount of units.
Yeah, I don't know if the amount, I can't remember if the amount of units is so much of a concern, but definitely the open space, green space was definitely a concern. Staff has looked at it in terms of access to some of the other park space within relatively close, but also the developers actually also has heard those comments, is that looking at providing some alternative, maybe even some play space inside the building. To kind of like, so it's kind of a neat idea in terms of providing like a tot lot kind of concept that would be supervised. And it was actually a very unique proposition that they had identified at one of their projects in Milwaukee that they were actually.
I've seen them do it.
So, yeah, so we'll see exactly what that entails when it comes in. So we are continuing, right now there's a parking study out, working through our Department of Public Works that we're actually working with, going to be working with them in terms of identify, particularly if the interest is the WPS site, in terms of what sort of parking may be located there. They're looking at all around downtown, but kind of for a variety of reasons, the WPS site is kind of a priority site for us. We want to probably get some more formal agreements in place with both the developer who's got that under option as well as WPS on how that might proceed. So we're having staff actually going to be assembling a meeting of some of the interested parties who need access to that parking, most likely. So that would include, Associated Bank, KI Center, the Hyatt Hotel, some of those other players in kind of that immediate area who would need access to that parking ramp if it was located there. Phase 1 shipyard is proceeding. Folks still building out there. We did run into some additional work with I guess it's the actual dock wall that's in the water, so that we need a little bit more work than we anticipated, so we're kind of dealing with that change order aspect right now and getting that completed. Anybody who's driven out by the Grandview Industrial Park and the Carnivore Project out Matt's Way, they're building, they're one of the fastest construction projects certainly I've seen since I've been here. They're really, really making great progress on that building. So we're excited to get them in and done. We also are dealing with a couple of staffs working with actually a couple of other interested prospects now in the lands immediately adjacent to Carnivore as possible prospects for that land. So it's amazing once you get a project started and being built, kind of attracts attention, and people are excited about that. So we'll be looking to possibly expand on that. I think most of the 222 Cherry Street, I think we're having our technical review committee meeting on that. That's part of the meeting this week. So they're looking to probably get started here, hopefully in the next couple of months, and once they get their final plans approved there as well. So looking forward to seeing something get moving on that project as well. So keep busy still. So yeah.
Did you
No, I
mention
think-
the,
You're busy, aren't you?
Yeah, Neil's covered it all. I did run into Peter and the rest of the team at 222, so the contractor was on site.
Okay.
They're doing some work, but yeah,
Good sign. That's right.
there's a lot happening.
Questions or comments?
did you mention
in regards
East
to-
Mason and the Fox River, that parcel, that, anything happening there?
The one from, that was actually Plan Commission last night,
good.
the former One Astor
Yes.
project. Right now, we are actually in the middle of rezoning that to Downtown 1, I think is the district. I think we selected on that to allow some different proposals there. We're actually finishing up the CSM to get that land swap transferred it done. Obviously, unfortunately, Mr. Miller passed away this past summer, so we're dealing with the trust that kind of owns that, and his attorney right now that's representing the trust to get that wrapped up and done. Our understanding is once that's all completed and done, the property probably will go up for sale, is our understanding.
Joe, maybe Jeff, I drove by on Main Street, used to be the old Pancake House, Main Street, and what is that?
Oh, yeah.
Boy, can't think of the name of the street. Anyway, it's a corner street, 3 corners. Corner street, you're doing okay activity on the river there.
Bills used to be.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Bills, that's what it was.
Bills.
What's happening? Something going on there? I mean, they're moving some big pillars, they're blocking things off.
They have it blocked off to the underground parking.
Okay.
There hasn't been a plan for that.
So there's nothing much happening right now on that old Bill's pancake? It's Main, and what's the other street?
Barry. Oh, Main and Barry, that's where, we're in discussions with the owner on that and trying to get some things achieved there. We've got orders actually on the site already in terms of making improvements on there. We hold off on enforcing those because we think there's hopefully a deal imminent, we hope. But we got some work still to do on.
Great location, great spot.
Yeah, definitely a challenge location though, for a variety of reasons, so.
Yes, downtown, Main Street, anything you can tell us?
Nothing major to report.
Okay, thank you. I don't think we as a board, is she, I don't think so.
Leah's still on.
Oh, Jessica.
Hi, I am here.
Are you happy?
Any updates, Leah?
No, I was at the plan commission meeting last night and, both pieces got tabled. So we'll be back on the 26th, I believe,
23rd.
23rd.
Yep.
Anything on Broadway, Alder Johnson? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Mayor, anything? Okay, good. Our next meeting is February 14th.
Valentine's
Wish
Day.
everybody Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everybody. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn it.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Kathy, all in favor, say aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, excellent meeting.
Thank you.
A lot of progress, guys. Lots of progress.
Recording stopped.